The forbidden borders. The stars stretched endless before the fleet, silent and cold. But every crew member felt the same strange weight pressing against their chests. Dozens of Imperial cruisers glided toward the invisible line known throughout the galaxy as the Terran border. To the Empire, it was only another sector waiting to be claimed. To everyone else, it was a graveyard. The warnings had been repeated for centuries. Old merchants whispered in shadowed markets. No one crosses into Terran space. No one comes back. Pirates told the same story before their throats were cut for cowardice. Even the smaller empires avoided this place, steering their ships far from the invisible edge. But the Galactic Empire was proud, and pride never bowed to superstition. Admiral Coran stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's Wrath, hands behind his back, eyes hard as steel. His voice cut the silence. We have wasted too much time listening to fairy tales. Humanity is small, weak. If they truly had power, they would already rule the stars. His officers nodded, though their eyes betrayed unease. They had all seen the reports. Ships gone missing, whole expeditions erased from records. Only fragments remained, scraps of terrified messages, static-filled cries, and one final phrase spoken again and again. We were warned. The fleet moved closer. Engines hummed low and scanners began to falter. Readings bent strangely, as if the laws of physics refused to obey. Crew whispered that the void felt alive, as if something unseen watched every movement. Scout Ship Alpha, proceed ahead, the Admiral ordered. The small craft peeled away from the formation and slid forward across the border. Every eye followed its glowing trail. The seconds dragged into minutes. Then silence. No signal, no warning. The scout vanished from the screens as if it had never existed. Signal loss? One officer asked, his voice thin. Or total destruction? Another muttered. Admiral Coran's jaw tightened. Recover contact now. But there was nothing to recover. The ship was gone. No wreckage. No explosion. No trace. A cold ripple passed across the fleet. The younger crew shifted nervously in their seats. The veterans stared into the dark and remembered the same stories they once laughed at. The void gave no answers. A soft voice broke the silence from the communications pit. Admiral, the system is clean. No enemy fire. No anomalies detected. It is like the ship was erased. The Admiral slammed a fist against the console. Erased by what? This is propaganda, tricks. Continue forward, the fleet obeyed. Engines flared again, pushing the massive ships across the border. Each second inside Terran space felt wrong. Lights flickered. Gravity hummed with uneven pressure. Hulls groaned, though no impact touched them. The further they went, the heavier the silence became. On the bridge, Lieutenant Vena whispered to her companion. It feels like the stars are watching us. Her words were low, but in the quiet they echoed too loud. The Admiral ignored it. His pride refused to admit fear. Scan deeper. I want locations of human settlements. If these Terrans dare hide behind myths, we will expose them to the galaxy. The scanners struggled. Images twisted, signals scrambled. Whole star systems appeared, then vanished, as if reality itself refused to let outsiders see. Then suddenly on the main screen a shape flickered into view. A massive object. It was not a star nor a planet. It was a ship, alone. Small compared to the Empire's cruisers, but it glowed faintly, steady and calm, as if it belonged here in a way no alien ship ever could. Identify, the Admiral barked. The system stuttered, then displayed a single word. Terran. The officers froze. A murmur spread. The legends spoke of humans, yes, but never of their ships being here. Waiting, watching. The Terran vessel drifted closer without hurry. No weapons powered up. No shields raised. It simply existed, and its presence alone filled the bridge with dread. Target it, the Admiral ordered, voice sharp, trying to cut through the growing fear. Weapons locked. Screens glowed red, but before the command could be given to fire, the ship's systems flickered again. A voice clear and calm echoed through every speaker on every ship in the fleet. You were warned, it was not an alien tongue. It was not translated. It was in their minds directly, each syllable carving into thought like a blade of ice. The crew gasped, hands clutching ears though no sound touched them. The Admiral staggered but forced his composure. Ignore it. Fire on my mark, another officer shouted. Sir! Weapons are malfunctioning. Across the fleet, cannons failed to respond. Power drained. Energy readings bent, folded, and dissolved. Entire control systems locked in place as if seized by invisible hands. The Terran ship drifted silently among them, smaller than a destroyer, but untouchable. Its calm glow reflected on every viewing window. The voice spoke again. "This is your last step. Terran Space is Forbidden." The words fell heavy. Even the Admiral could feel the weight of them. Not a threat, not anger. A truth spoken like the laws of nature. And then, without flash, without sound, another of the Empire's cruisers blinked out of existence. One moment there, the next gone. No wreckage, no fireball, simply erased just like the scout ship. Panic erupted. Crew shouted, alarms blared, but nothing answered. The void swallowed their cries. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Corrin felt something he never admitted before. Fear. The border had been crossed. The warnings ignored, and now the Empire would learn why Terran space was forbidden. Whispers of the past. The silence after the cruiser vanished hung like a blade above the entire fleet. Men and women on every deck tried to breathe steady, but the air itself felt heavier, thicker, as though the void had turned into a living thing pressing against their lungs. On the bridge of the Dominion's wrath, no one dared speak for long moments. They simply watched the empty space where a warship had existed seconds before. At last, a young officer whispered, "This is not possible." Admiral Corrin's gaze burned. Everything has an explanation. Humans do not command such power. They are a forgotten people clinging to a forgotten world. His voice was firm, but even he could feel the crack in his certainty. Across the Empire, stories had lingered in the shadows. Once, humanity had been part of the galactic stage. Small colonies, fragile ships, settlements scattered like sparks among greater empires. But then something had changed. Their borders closed. Every map redrew itself to mark Terran space in dark warning colors. No ship entered and returned. The galaxy forgot them, except for whispers that still clung to frightened tongues. Lieutenant Vena's hands trembled on her console. She remembered her father's voice when she was a child, telling her the tales that parents told their young. "Stay away from Terran borders, little one. Stay away from the people who never die, who fight without fear, who return from war as ghosts." She had laughed then, like all children laughed. But now, standing on the edge of those same borders, her laughter felt like a sin. "Admiral," another officer said cautiously. "Permission to speak freely?" "Granted." We all know the stories. The Trade Guild sent fleets. The Syndicate sent mercenaries. Even the free colonies tried once. None returned. Whole records were buried. The survivors who did come back? His voice faltered. They were broken. They spoke of shadows in human form, of ships that moved like living beasts, of voices in their heads. And every one of them died within months, some by their own hand. The Admiral's fist clenched. Rumors, cowards' tales. But a shadow passed through the bridge crew. Everyone had heard those stories. Everyone had wondered why the mightiest fleets in history never dared push deeper. The galaxy was vast, but Terran space remained untouched. "Commander," the Admiral barked, desperate to reclaim control. "Have the logs displayed. Show them truth." The main screen shifted, pulling from the Empire's archives. It showed the last official attempt nearly a century ago. A task force of 50 ships had crossed the line. Reports were steady at first. Scans, routine patrols, quiet borders. Then the signals broke. Transmission after transmission came in broken fragments. Screams, alarms. A single captain shouting, "They are here!" before static swallowed the feed. The final image recorded was a blurred shape moving faster than sensors could follow. Then nothing. 50 ships lost, not even wreckage recovered. The file ended cold. The crew shifted uneasily. None spoke. The screen faded black. "Do you see?" the Admiral demanded. "We are the Empire. We will succeed where others failed. Humanity hides behind tricks, but we will uncover their secrets and burn their myths away." But his words rang hollow. Even he could hear it. A sudden signal cut through the bridge. Static at first, then faint whispers. At first they thought it was interference. Then the whispers grew sharper. "You should not have come." The voice was not loud. It was not threatening. It was soft, steady, and everywhere. It spoke inside their skulls. Crew members clutched at their ears, but there was nothing to block. The words bypassed sound entirely. Lieutenant Vena gasped. She had heard that exact phrase before. A forgotten report hidden in her academy's archives. A half-burned file dismissed as fiction. Survivors of another incursion had said those same words haunted them until the day they died. You should not have come. The whisper faded. Silence returned, heavier than before. Admiral, this is not technology, the communications officer said weakly. This is something else. Enough. Corrin snapped. Humanity dares frighten us with illusions. Prepare the fleet. We advance deeper. But in his own chest, beneath the armor of pride, he felt a strange dread, because somewhere in the back of his memory, he too had heard stories whispered when he was young. Stories of a species that once fought the galaxy's strongest armies and never lost. Stories of men and women who did not bow, who did not yield, who carried a rage greater than any empire. As the fleet moved forward, the stars themselves seemed to dim. Every officer on every ship felt the same creeping truth gnawing at their bones. The warnings were not legends. They were history. And now, the Galactic Empire was about to repeat it. The encounter. The Empire's fleet pushed deeper into Terran space, their engines burning bright against the silent void. The stars no longer looked like stars. They flickered strangely, bending at the edges as though the universe itself was twisting away from them. The crew felt it. Even hardened soldiers whispered under their breath, their courage fading with every mile crossed. Then, without warning, every console dimmed. The lights across the ships pulsed once, twice, then steadied, but weaker than before. On the main screen of the flagship Dominion's Wrath, a single image appeared. A ship. It was small, no larger than a corvette, drifting calmly ahead of the Imperial fleet. Its hull was plain, without markings, and it moved with no weapons powered. Yet the moment it appeared, silence fell across every bridge. Officers leaned forward. Some forgot to breathe. That is it? One of the younger crewmen asked in disbelief. That is a Terran ship? But none laughed. Something about it felt wrong. The Terran vessel did not behave like prey, nor like an enemy preparing for war. It simply existed. Calm, steady, unafraid. Target it, Admiral Corrin ordered, his voice sharp, trying to steady his command. Show these phantoms what true power is. Weapons locked across dozens of cruisers. Targeting reticles flashed red on screens. Fingers hovered above firing controls, but then it happened. The Terran ship shifted slightly like a predator flicking its tail. No blast of energy, no visible attack, and yet across the fleet entire systems went dead. Guns froze mid-charge. Missiles refused to respond. Energy readings dissolved into static. On every ship, crew shouted. Engineers hammered consoles. Weapons officers screamed for power. Captains yelled for updates. Nothing worked. It was as though the Terran ship had reached inside their machines and turned them off with a thought. And then a voice filled the fleet. You are warned. It did not come through speakers. It came inside their skulls. Officers clutched at their heads, eyes wide, gasping. The voice was calm, steady, and cold. Admiral Corrin's face turned pale, but he forced himself to speak. Do not fear them. They are weak. This is before he finished, one of the cruisers to their left vanished. No explosion. No wreckage. One instant it existed, the next it was gone. The empty stars where it had been seemed to burn darker, as if swallowing the memory. The crew froze in terror. Some whispered prayers in languages long forgotten. Others simply stared at the void where their comrades had been. The Terran ship drifted closer. Its engines were quiet, glowing faintly, but its presence filled every screen like a looming storm. Admiral Corrin roared, "Retaliate! Use manual override! Fire everything!" The gunners tried. They pressed keys, yanked levers, slammed their fists into dead controls, but nothing answered. Their ships had become hollow shells, stripped of power. The Terran vessel spoke again, its voice sharp as a blade of ice. Your empire was told. Terran space is not yours. The words struck deeper than weapons. They carried no rage, no emotion, only truth. One captain of the fleet, trembling, dared to open his comms. His voice cracked as he spoke. We mean no harm. We only seek passage. Let us go, and we will never return. The Terran ship paused. For a moment, the silence was unbearable. Then the voice returned. Lies, always lies. Empires never stop. But we do not forget. We do not forgive. Suddenly, the stars around them shifted. More ships appeared. Not one or two. Dozens. Small Terran vessels materialized from the darkness, silent as ghosts. They had been there all along, hidden, watching, waiting, Now they surrounded the fleet like wolves circling trapped prey. Every Imperial officer felt the same sinking weight. Their mighty fleet with weapons that could burn worlds was powerless. The Terrans were everywhere, Lieutenant Vena whispered, her voice trembling. This is not war. This is judgment. The Admiral turned to her, his face hard, but his eyes betrayed the truth he refused to admit. They were not fighting an enemy. They were standing before something greater, something that had chosen to let them live or let them vanish. The Terran ship drifted even closer to the flagship. Its glow washed across the windows, painting every officer's face pale white. Then the voice returned one last time, calm and final. Leave now, or cease to exist. No one moved. No one spoke. The fleet's fate hung in silence, and Admiral Corran, proud servant of the Empire, felt his will breaking at last. The lesson: the Imperial fleet floated in silence, trapped inside a cage of stars. The Terran ship surrounded them, dozens of small vessels drifting calmly like hunters that had no need to hurry. No weapons glowed on their hulls, no shields shimmered in defense. They simply watched, and their very presence crushed the Empire's pride. Admiral Corran gripped the edge of his command chair so tightly, his knuckles turned white. His voice was low, forced through clenched teeth. We are not prey. We are the Empire. They cannot frighten us into retreat. But the truth was already clear to every soul aboard. They were not in control. Their weapons were dead. Their engines groaned without power. Their systems bent under invisible hands. The Terrans had reduced the most powerful fleet of the galaxy to a collection of drifting carcasses. Still, pride demanded defiance. Manual overrides, Corran shouted. Divert all reserves to weapons. I do not care if you tear the systems apart. Fire something! Across the fleet, engineers obeyed, hands shaking, sweat running down their faces. Sparks flew as panels were ripped open. Emergency power flooded through circuits not built to carry it. Cannons hummed weakly. Missiles clicked into half-readiness. For a brief second, hope flickered in the crew's eyes. Now, the Admiral roared. Every ship fired. Energy bolts and missiles tore into the void, screaming toward the Terran ships. The flashes lit the darkness like fireworks. Officers cheered in relief. For one heartbeat, the Empire believed. Then the weapons bent. The missiles slowed, twisted mid-flight, and turned back, arcing like predators who had changed their prey. The energy blasts stretched unnaturally, folding upon themselves, disappearing as if swallowed by the black. The mighty assault of the Empire dissolved before their eyes. And then silence again. On the bridges, the cheering died. Horror spread. They had not even touched the Terrans. The human voice returned, colder than before. You still resist. You do not learn. Another Imperial cruiser blinked out of existence. One instant alive, the next erased. Not destroyed. Not broken. Erased. Like it had never existed at all. Screams filled the comms as crew across the fleet watched comrades vanish without a trace. The Admiral's officers looked to him for answers, but his jaw hung open, his breath ragged. On one of the smaller destroyers, a captain fell to his knees. We cannot fight this. These are not soldiers. They are something else. The Terran ships drifted closer. Their glow pulsed faintly, a rhythm like a heartbeat, slow and patient. They were not rushing, not desperate. They knew victory was already theirs. Lieutenant Vena's voice shook as she whispered to no one in particular. It is not about war. They are teaching us. Her words spread like fire across the silent bridge, and everyone felt it. The Terrans were not here to conquer, not here to harvest, not here to enslave. They were here to deliver a lesson the Empire refused to learn. The human voice returned. We are not your conquest. We are not your prize. We are the wall that does not break. You were warned. The words settled heavy in every heart. The Empire had built itself on conquest. It had crushed species after species, taken worlds without mercy, broken empires with fire and steel. But here, before Terran space, all their power meant nothing. On the flagship, Admiral Corran staggered forward. His pride fought against the truth clawing inside him. He tried to speak, but the words came out hollow. We will not bow. The Terran ship in front of them pulsed brighter, and then, as if in response to his defiance, 3 more Imperial ships vanished. Entire crews lost in a blink. Their voices cut mid-scream. Their signals erased. The bridge fell into chaos. Officers cried out, some begging for mercy, others cursing in rage. But none of it mattered. The lesson continued. One by one, the Terran ships drifted closer. Their glow washed across the Imperial fleet like pale fire. Systems flickered, hulls groaned, air itself seemed heavy in every cabin. The voice whispered again, softer now, yet sharper than any blade. Leave, or none of you will remain. Admiral Curran looked around at his officers. Their eyes were broken, their courage gone. He knew the truth. His pride had dragged them here, and now thousands of lives balanced on the edge of silence. But still, a part of him refused to kneel. He lifted his chin, teeth clenched, and whispered more to himself than to the crew. The Empire never surrenders. The Terran ship pulsed once, brighter than before. Another cruiser vanished. Curran fell silent. He could feel his pride turning to ash. This was no battle. This was a choice. Terrans had shown him what conquest against them meant. Erasure. For the first time in his life, the Admiral bowed his head, and the voice came one last time. Steady, final. Go tell them. Terran Space is forbidden. The ships around them pulled back slowly, leaving the fleet scarred, broken, and humiliated. The lesson was clear. The Empire had learned. The aftermath. The surviving ships limped out of Terran space like wounded animals. Their engines burned weak, their hulls scarred, their crews silent. Where once a mighty fleet of the Galactic Empire had stretched across the stars, now only half remained. The others had not been destroyed. They had been erased, as if history itself had swallowed them whole. Inside the flagship Dominion's Wrath, Admiral Curran sat slumped in his command chair. His hands trembled on the armrests. The man who once shouted orders that shook galaxies could not raise his voice. His eyes were hollow, haunted by the memory of ships vanishing before his eyes. Pride, the fire that had carried him through decades of war, was now ash. No one on the bridge spoke. Even the hum of machines felt quieter, as though afraid to disturb the silence left behind by the Terrans. Officers moved like shadows, their faces pale, their hands heavy. They had entered as soldiers of conquest. They left as survivors of something far greater. At last, a voice from communications whispered, "Admiral? Orders?" Curran's mouth opened, but no words came. He had nothing to command. He had no victory to claim, no glory to deliver. Only shame. The fleet crossed back into neutral space, and the strange weight lifted from their chests. The stars looked normal again, cold but familiar. Yet to the crews, nothing would ever feel normal again. When they reached the Empire's borders, word had already spread. Signals traveled faster than ships, and rumors spread faster still. Dockworkers whispered of a fleet that entered Terran space and returned in half. Soldiers in barracks spoke of voices inside their minds. Merchants told customers that the Empire's greatest ships had been erased without a shot. The stories grew with every telling. Some said the humans commanded living machines. Others swore they bent space itself. A few even whispered that the Terrans were not flesh at all, but something older, something eternal, that wore human faces. The Empire tried to bury the truth. Admirals sealed records. Officials called the mission a strategic withdrawal. Survivors were silenced, scattered, or reassigned to remote posts. But secrets have their own life. Every attempt to crush the truth only fed the hunger of rumor. In taverns on distant colonies, smugglers laughed nervously as they repeated the phrase, "You were warned." In academies, cadets passed hidden files of the vanished ships, studying the blurred images of the Terran vessel glowing in the dark. On mining stations, workers stared at the stars with fresh unease, wondering if the humans watch them even now. And in the deepest halls of the Imperial Palace, leaders argued in fear. Some demanded immediate war to crush the Terrans before their influence spread. Others whispered that war was suicide, that the Empire must retreat and never return. No consensus came, only fear. Among the survivors, silence became their language. They spoke little of what they had seen, for words could not capture it. But in their eyes lived the memory of that calm, glowing ship, and the voice that spoke inside their bones. Lieutenant Vena resigned her post weeks after returning. She disappeared into the outer colonies, carrying with her the whispers of her father's old warnings, now proven true. She told no one, yet in her silence people understood. Humanity was not to be touched. Admiral Corrin faced a tribunal. His enemies called him a coward. His allies called him unlucky. He said nothing in his defense. What words could he speak? In the end, he was stripped of command. He returned to his home world, a broken man, his pride buried beneath the weight of Terran eyes. But even in disgrace, he could not forget. At night he woke gasping, the voice still echoing inside his head. Leave, or cease to exist. And far away, on the edge of Terran space, the human ships drifted once more into silence. No broadcasts, no messages, no pursuit. They did not seek conquest. They did not seek revenge. They waited, watching, knowing the galaxy would never forget what it had learned. The Empire had tasted their lesson. The galaxy had heard their warning. Terran space was forbidden, not by decree, not by law, by truth. And in the cold silence of the stars, a single Terran commander stood before a vast screen, eyes fixed on the distant galaxies. His voice was soft, almost like a prayer, spoken only for himself. Let them try again. The stars gave no answer. They did not need to. The lesson had been carved into history.